While my daughter was fighting for her life, her husband was raising champagne glasses on a yacht. That's not a nightmare I dreamed up, it's the chilling reality I faced inside the ICU of Riverside General Hospital. Before we continue, please take a second to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Room 412. Cold fluorescent lights flickering against the machines that kept Anna breathing. I watched the steady rhythm of the ventilator, the subtle rise and fall of her chest, and the small glimmer of her wedding ring that caught the light. Every beat of the monitor felt like a reminder that time was running out. Her husband, Dr. Michael Harris, hadn't set foot in that hospital for 3 days. But I knew exactly where he was. Social media made sure of it. Photos of him with Laura Bennett, a woman in a scarlet bikini who most certainly was not my daughter, plastered across Instagram. They weren't sitting in grief. They were sailing across the bay on a $55,000 yacht, docked at slip number 62. While Anna lay unconscious, her brain swollen from the accident, Michael was celebrating what he called a new beginning. The image was seared into my mind, the contrast between my daughter's fragile body beneath sterile hospital sheets and her husband's carefree smile under the golden sunset. A father should never have to hold his child's hand while watching betrayal unfold in real time, but that night was only the beginning. What I discovered in the hours that followed would unravel everything I thought I knew about the man my daughter married. At first, I thought the worst thing I would have to endure was seeing my daughter's chest rise and fall with the help of machines, but that illusion shattered the moment a nurse named Maria Lopez, a woman with 24 years of service etched into her badge, pulled me aside late at night. Her voice trembled as she whispered that there was something I desperately needed to know about my son-in-law, Dr. Michael Harris. She held a clipboard in her hands, and when she showed it to me, my blood froze. On it was a DNR order, "Do not resuscitate," signed with a hand that was far too careful, far too neat to belong to Michael, a man whose handwriting I had seen countless times in birthday cards and casual notes. The order had been filed just a day earlier at 3:42 p.m. While I had already seen photos of Michael and Laura sipping champagne aboard their rented yacht miles away, posted online with bright filters and captions about sunsets. The timing didn't make sense, and I didn't need to be a judge with 3 decades of courtroom experience to know that a forgery was staring me in the face. Maria lowered her voice even further, as she told me that hospital policy required 2 signatures for such an order, one from the attending physician and one from another doctor. Yet here was only one, and it wasn't even legitimate. The attending physician, Dr. Reynolds, had not signed off. My pulse quickened as I realized this was not just negligence. It was intentional deception. Maria wasn't finished. She leaned in closer, telling me that the nurses had overheard Michael making calls from the consultation room, his voice sharp and clinical, not the tone of a grieving husband. He wasn't asking about Anna's condition. He was asking insurance agents about payout timelines, about what documents were required to claim benefits, about how quickly a $3.1 million life insurance policy could be processed in the event of her death. I remembered the day Anna had told me about that policy, how Michael insisted on such a high figure for their future security. I had thought he was being cautious, even responsible. Now I saw it for what it truly was. A setup, a motive, the foundation of a chilling plan. I sat there in the cafeteria of Riverside General, the hum of vending machines and distant beeps of monitors surrounding us, staring at the manila folder Maria had risked her career to bring me. My mind raced. This wasn't just about forged documents or greedy phone calls. This was about Anna's life hanging in the balance while the man she trusted most plotted her downfall. Then came the final blow. Maria hesitated, her eyes darting around the room before she spoke. "There's something else," she said softly. "About Sophie. Sophie, my granddaughter, just 7 years old. Anna's whole world." Maria told me that Dr. Harris had filed paperwork with Child Protective Services claiming I was unfit to care for her if Anna didn't survive. His reasoning? That I was too old, that I was suffering from early-stage dementia. The lie hit me harder than any courtroom cross-examination ever could. Just last month I had undergone a full cognitive assessment, and my doctor had assured me I was sharp and healthy, my memory intact, my reasoning sound. Michael was attempting to erase me from my granddaughter's life with the stroke of a pen, to sever every tie that connected Sophie to a family who truly loved her. The air in that cafeteria felt heavy, pressing down on me as though the walls themselves were closing in. I realized then that Michael's plan was far more calculated than I had dared to imagine. He wasn't just abandoning his wife. He was cutting her off from every lifeline, isolating her, erasing anyone who could stand in his way of collecting millions and starting over with his mistress. Maria reached for my hand before she left, whispering, "In all my years here, Judge Collins, I've never seen a husband refuse to even hold his wife's hand." Her words echoed in my chest long after she walked away. That night, I sat in Anna's room, ignoring the rules that barred me from staying past visiting hours. I knew which security entrances went unwatched, old habits from decades of courthouse vigilance. I sat beside her, holding her warm hand, feeling the steady pulse beneath her skin. The machines hummed and beeped, showing brain activity, not a flat line, not an absence of hope, but the intricate rhythms of someone fighting to return. And as I thought about Michael's smiling face in those yacht photos, his arm draped around Laura while my daughter's skull was being opened by surgeons, something inside me hardened. At 11:53 p.m., I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Tony," I said when the line connected, "it's Edward Collins. You once told me you owed me a favor." Tony Castellanos, a private investigator and former FBI agent, had never forgotten that I'd helped him win custody of his children when his ex-wife tried to vanish with them. His voice was calm, professional, but I could hear the curiosity behind it. "What do you need, Judge?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "I need you to investigate my son-in-law. Every bank account, every call he's made, every dollar he's spent. I want to know how a surgical resident making $60,000 a year is affording $55,000 yacht weekends." There was a pause. Then Tony's voice hardened. "Understood. I'll need a retainer." I thought of the retirement savings I had built carefully over decades, money I had once planned to leave entirely to Anna and Sophie. Without hesitation, I told him I would wire $25,000 by morning. As I ended the call, I looked at my daughter's peaceful face and swore silently that I would not let Michael Harris win. This was no longer about suspicion. This was about exposing the truth and protecting what was left of my family, no matter the cost. By dawn the next morning, my decision felt like steel inside my chest. Years on the bench had taught me that facts and timing win battles, and if I wanted to protect Anna and Sophie, I had to move fast. He arrived at Riverside General at 6, Nule. Men sharp, the same routine I'd kept since the accident, but this time something was different. The security guard at the ICU entrance blocked my way. "Sorry, sir," he said, glancing at a list. "Access has been restricted to immediate family only, doctor's orders." I held up my visitor badge, the one I'd worn every day for 2 weeks, and he shook his head. "That badge has been revoked, Mr. Collins. Dr. Harris left specific instructions." My stomach twisted. Michael had banned me from seeing my own daughter. I tried calling him straight to voicemail. I called the hospital administration, and they promised to look into it and get back to me. But 3 hours later, I was still sitting in the parking lot staring at my phone, no closer to answers. At 2:15 p.m., Maria Lopez found me in the cafeteria, off-duty but still in scrubs, her 24-year badge catching the light. She slid a manila folder across the table without a word. Inside were photocopied medical charts, insurance notes, and visitor logs. "Look at the signature on the DNR order," she whispered. I did. It was Michael's name, but not his handwriting too neat, too careful, like someone practicing forgery. The file showed it had been submitted at 3:42 p.m. The previous day, when Michael and Laura were still on the yacht. I had seen Laura's Instagram stories myself. They didn't dock until 5 p.m. Maria pointed to the second page. "This DNR has only one signature. Hospital policy requires 2. Dr. Reynolds never signed it. This is fraud." My fingers tightened on the paper. In 30 years on the bench, I had seen forgeries, fraud, and insurance scams, but never one this personal. Maria's voice dropped lower. "There's more. Look at the visitor log for Anna's room the last 2 weeks." I scanned the list. Michael Harris. October 12th at 6:10 p.m. Michael Harris. October 16th at 10:30 a.m. 2 visits in 14 days. My daughter was fighting for her life, and her husband could barely manage 10 minutes. Maria continued. "The nurses have been talking about the phone calls." "What phone calls?" I asked. "To the insurance company. Dr. Harris has been calling them daily, asking about life insurance policies, death benefits, expedited payments. He thinks we don't hear him, but the walls are thin. It's a $3.1 million policy, Mr. Collins. My mind flashed back to when Anna bought the policy. Michael had insisted on the amount, saying they needed to protect their future. My chest tightened. And Sophie? I asked quietly. Maria hesitated. Yesterday he filed papers with Child Protective Services claiming you're too old to care for Sophie if something happens to Anna. Says you have early-stage dementia. The lie hit me like a hammer. Just last month I had passed a cognitive assessment with perfect scores. Michael was trying to erase me from Sophie's life before Anna was even gone. Maria squeezed my hand. This is a pattern we see sometimes, she whispered. Cut off everyone who cares about the patient. Isolate her completely, usually right before. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Edward, we need to talk. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., my office. Not Dad. Not Ed. Edward. My name. Formal. Cold. I looked at Maria, this woman risking her career to warn me. Thank you, I said. She nodded and stood, but before leaving, she turned back. In all my years here, Judge Collins, I've never seen a husband refuse to hold his wife's hand. That night, I slipped into Anna's room after visiting ours through an entrance I knew security wouldn't be watching. Old courthouse habits. I sat beside her, holding her warm hand, feeling the steady pulse under my thumb. The machines showed brain activity complex patterns, not the flat line of someone beyond hope. She was fighting to come back. I thought about the yacht photos, Michael's arm around Laura, both of them laughing while Anna lay in surgery. At 11:53 p.m., I made a decision that would change everything. I pulled out my phone and dialed Tony Castellanos. Tony, it's Ed Collins, I said. Remember that favor you owe me? 23 years ago, I had presided over Tony's divorce case, helping him keep custody of his kids when his ex-wife tried to disappear with them. Former FBI white-collar crime specialist, now a private investigator. His voice was steady. What do you need? I need you to investigate my son-in-law. Everything. Financial records, phone records, that yacht he's been posting about. I want to know how a surgical resident affords a $55,000 weekend. What's the timeline? He asked. I looked at Anna's face, peaceful but fighting. Yesterday, I said. I'll wire you $25,000 as a retainer. Understood, he replied. We ended the call, and I sat there in the blue glow of the monitors, stroking Anna's hair the way I had when she was a child. What Michael didn't know was that Laura's yacht photos had already revealed something she never intended to show. By morning, Tony would begin tracing every dollar Michael had stolen, every lie he had told, every crime he had committed. This was no longer a father praying for his daughter's survival. This was a judge preparing his case. At 7:15 the following morning, I sat in Anna's ICU room with a paper cup of lukewarm coffee, reading the newspaper headlines aloud the way I had when she was a child, hoping some fragment of memory would anchor her to this world. The sports section, her favorite, rested on her blanket as the machines whispered steady signals of life. My phone buzzed. Michael's voice came through, cold and detached, not a husband's grief, but a surgeon's clinical distance. Edward, we need to discuss Anna's situation, he said, as though she were just another case file. I kept my tone level, years of courtroom discipline guiding me. What situation, Michael? There was a pause, then he said, the brain scans show significant trauma. Recovery is unlikely. We need to be realistic. I stared at the monitor displaying rhythmic waves of brain activity. Which neurologist gave that opinion? I asked. Another pause, shorter but telling. Dr. Hanley, the best in the state, he said. I wrote the name down. Within an hour, Tony confirmed that Dr. Hanley had never examined Anna and had no knowledge of her case. Michael was lying again. By afternoon, I met him in his office, the tension as thick as the antiseptic air. He wore his white coat like armor, but I noticed his tie was crooked and his eyes avoided mine. He started first. Edward, I know this is difficult, but I have to think about Sophie's future, about my practice. I can't put my life on hold indefinitely. The word my cut through me. Your life? I repeated slowly. He nodded. Anna would want me to move on, to find happiness. I thought of the red bikini, the yacht, the champagne. Are you familiar with California's community property laws, Michael? His head tilted. Why? Because as Anna's husband, you're entitled to half her assets, including her life insurance policy, but only if you're still married when she dies. Silence followed, sharp as a gavel strike. I let it hang before pressing further. $3.1 million is a lot of money for someone living beyond his means. His jaw tightened. What are you implying? I'm not implying. I'm stating a fact. I mentioned the yacht rental, the time-stamped Instagram photos, the DNR order filed while he was still on the water. His composure cracked for a moment, then he tried to regain it. Edward, you don't understand. Anna is brain dead. Machines are keeping her alive. She's not coming back. Dr. Hanley confirmed it. Interesting, I said evenly, because Dr. Hanley told me himself he's never heard of Anna Harris. Michael froze. His eyes darted. You must have misunderstood. I leaned forward. Michael, I spent 30 years on the bench listening to liars. You're not very good at it. His mask slipped further. What do you want? He asked, voice low and tight. I want you to stop filing false DNR orders. I want you to stop calling insurance companies. And I want you to visit your wife. His eyes narrowed. Or what? I smiled faintly. The kind of smile I used to give defendants who had just sealed their fate. Or I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of husband you really are. His tone darkened, no longer feigned civility, but venom. Listen carefully, old man. I'm a Harvard-trained surgeon. You're a washed-up small-town judge who can barely remember what day it is. Anna is going to die, and when she does, I'll remarry. Sophie will have a new mother, one who can actually function. His words cut like a blade, but I held steady. Interesting choice of words, I said quietly. I'll remember them. He straightened his shoulders, trying to reclaim control. You're not welcome at the hospital anymore. Security has your photo. If you try to visit Anna again, they'll call the police. I thought of Maria risking her career, of the nurses whispering about his calls. Do you know what I learned in 3 decades of family court? I asked. What? He snapped. The husband who works hardest to keep people away from his wife usually has something to hide. His face blanched, but he recovered quickly. You don't know anything. I leaned closer. I know Laura Bennett's real name. I know she's 28, employed at Horizon Medical Billing, the very company that handles this hospital's insurance claims. And I know she's been accessing patient insurance records, including Anna's. That's a federal crime, Michael. HIPAA violations carry serious penalties. His hand shook slightly as he reached for his coffee. I continued, voice like a knife sliding between ribs. I know you've taken Laura to Le Jardin 48 times in the past 18 months. Average bill $450. That's over $20,000 in restaurant expenses on a resident's salary. I lowered my tone. And I know you've been planning this since the day Anna increased her life insurance policy. 3 years, Michael. 3 years of laying the groundwork. He swallowed hard, breath shallow. You have no proof, he muttered. I straightened. Not yet, but I will. I left him sitting in his office, pale and rattled, the mask of arrogance torn away. At 7:45 a.m. the next day, I called Tony. How fast can you get me financial records, credit card statements, property logs? Give me 24 hours, he said. Make it 12, I demanded. That night I sat beside Anna, her hand in mine, the monitors casting a soft glow across her still face. Michael had called me a washed-up judge, but he underestimated one simple truth. I had spent my life documenting the lies of men just like him, and I had never lost a case built on evidence. For Anna, for Sophie, I would do it again. This time, the courtroom would not be the only battleground. Michael's empire of lies was about to collapse under its own weight. At 3:12 the next morning, I was still in Anna's room, her hand warm in mine, the rhythmic beep of the monitors steady as I scrolled through Tony's preliminary report glowing on my phone screen. Numbers don't lie, not when they are tracked by banks, time-stamped by servers, and documented across credit card statements. Michael Harris, age 40, Harvard medical graduate, surgical resident at Riverside General, with an annual salary of $62,000, had somehow managed to spend $132,000 in the past 6 months. Yacht rentals totaling $55,000, jewelry from Cartier costing $25,000, a Patek Philippe watch worth $19,000, all for Laura Bennett, his mistress. Lavish dinners at Le Jardin and other fine restaurants nearly 50 times, another $21,000, each transaction neatly aligning with small withdrawals from Anna's accounts. He had been siphoning money in increments too modest to trigger federal reporting alerts, but steady enough to drain $420,000 from her trust fund in just 4 months. The math was damning. It wasn't simply infidelity. It was systematic theft. I thought back to Anna at 8 years old, running to me after school with pigtails bouncing, shouting, "Daddy, guess what I learned today?" She had trusted Michael with that same innocence, and he had betrayed it. My phone buzzed again, a text message from Michael. "Change of plans. Meeting moved to tomorrow. Don't contact me again." The shortness of his words reeked of panic. Tony called minutes later, his voice clipped. "Judge, I've been monitoring Michael's communications. Legal, all public records. He's been calling insurance companies every week. Same questions. What documents are required? How fast payouts can be made? Whether claims can be expedited in emergencies. He isn't just planning Anna's death, he's timing it." My hand clenched around the phone as I stared at Anna's face, her eyelashes fluttering faintly, her chest rising and falling like a tide. Michael wasn't just preparing for her death, he was orchestrating it. I rose from my chair and walked to the ICU window. Outside, the parking lot was empty except for a few nurses' cars, the night shift carrying on its silent duties. That's when I decided this would not just be about stopping Michael. It would be about destroying him. At 3:45 a.m., I drove home for the first time in 4 days. The mailbox overflowed with bills, advertisements, and a letter from Sophie's school asking about her absences. Inside, the air was stale, dust motes hanging in the lamplight. I went straight to my study, pulled open the file cabinet, and retrieved a folder I hadn't touched in years. My retirement savings. $891,000 accumulated from decades of careful investments. Money I had meant to leave entirely to Anna and Sophie. Without hesitation, I wrote a check for $50,000. Tony would need more resources, and I wanted every stone overturned. Then I called my attorney, Janet Walsh, who had handled my wife's estate years ago. It was 4:07 a.m., but her voice came groggy and familiar. "Bill, is everything all right?" "Janet, I need an emergency petition filed. Temporary guardianship of Sophie. She's in danger." Silence, then a sharp inhale. "What kind of danger?" I told her everything. The forged DNR order, the insurance calls, the stolen funds, Michael's attempt to have me declared unfit. My words tumbled out, sharp and deliberate, each revelation another nail in his coffin. "My God, Edward," she whispered, "are you certain about this?" "Janet, I've spent 30 years watching abusers manipulate families. I won't let it happen to mine. I need full financial investigation, forensic accounting, every document traced." She warned me it would be expensive, but I didn't care. Money was irrelevant compared to Anna's life and Sophie's safety. At 6 a.m., I slipped back into the hospital through a side entrance security didn't monitor. Old habits. Anna lay the same, but when I leaned close and whispered, "Sweetheart, Daddy's here, and I'm going to protect you and Sophie," her heart rate flickered upward for just a moment on the monitor. She could hear me. At 6:15, my phone rang. Janet again, her tone sharper now. "Bill, forensic accounting won't just uncover theft. It will find everything: hidden accounts, false documents, federal crimes. Are you ready for that?" For the first time in weeks, I smiled. "Yes, the sooner the better." Later that morning at 8:32 a.m., Dr. Elaine Kim arrived at my study, recommended by Janet, a forensic accountant with 22 years at the FBI before going private. Her eyes were sharp, her voice calm. She opened her laptop, spreadsheets filling the screen. "Judge Collins, your son-in-law is either incredibly foolish or dangerously arrogant. He's been funneling money through multiple accounts, each under slight variations of his name: M. Harris, Michael P. Harris, Dr. M. Harris. Every transfer carries a digital fingerprint, timestamps, IP addresses, Hospital login data. She clicked to another page. October 10th, 2:46 p.m., $9,000 withdrawn from Anna's trust fund. At that exact time, hospital records show he was in surgery with a pediatric appendectomy. Impossible to be in two places at once. She tapped another line. October 11th, $8,800 spent at Cartier. Receipt attached. A diamond bracelet purchased for Laura Bennett, paid for with Anna's inheritance. Each line was another blow. 420,000 stolen. 8 forged documents tied to insurance. Dozens of suspicious calls. Dr. Kim's voice was steady. This isn't random, it's systematic. The objective is clear, to profit from Anna's death. My phone rang again, Tony on the line. Judge, you need to hear this. Michael's been using the hospital landline to call Laura. Routine calls are recorded for quality assurance. I pulled one from October 17th, 9:21 p.m. His words, "Don't worry about the old man. Anna will be gone soon, and then we'll have everything." My blood chilled, but I pressed on. "Anything else?" Tony continued. Insurance call from October 19th, 11:47 a.m. Michael told the agent he could arrange a death certificate within 48 hours if necessary. That's conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. 20 years minimum. Dr. Kim looked up from her screen. Judge Collins, this case is already strong. With each new piece, it becomes bulletproof. I set down the phone, my hands steady, despite the storm raging inside me. Michael had built his scheme carefully, but arrogance had blinded him. Every dollar he stole, every document he forged, every call he made, it was all leaving a trail, and I was gathering every piece. For 30 years I had taught in my courtroom that documentation wins cases. This time the case was personal, and I would ensure it ended with Michael Harris exposed, disgraced, and ruined. By noon that same day, the net around Michael Harris had begun to tighten, and I could feel the shift in the air as though justice itself was leaning closer. Dr. Kim's forensic report continued to pour out evidence like water bursting through a broken dam. She showed me account numbers, time-stamped withdrawals, and receipts that lined up perfectly with Michael's extravagant purchases for Laura Bennett. It was no longer suspicion or even strong circumstantial proof. It was a mountain of hard evidence, enough to bury him in both civil and criminal court. Then came the call that hardened my resolve into something sharper than steel. At 12:40 p.m., Nurse Patricia Williams, who worked the ICU night shift, reached me on an unknown number. Her voice was low, urgent, almost frightened. "Mr. Collins," she said, "Maria told me you were looking into Dr. Harris. There's something you need to know." I braced myself. Last night at 2:05 a.m., Dr. Harris came into the ICU. He wasn't scheduled, no orders listed. He went straight into Anna's room carrying a syringe. I stopped him and asked what he was administering. He got defensive, said it was routine care, but Mr. Collins, the syringe wasn't labeled, and there was no record in the chart. My chest turned to ice. "Where is it now?" I asked. "I secured it in the lab for testing," she said. "Protocol for suspicious medication." By 12:50, Dr. Kim called me back, her voice grave. "The results are in. That syringe contained a concentrated dose of potassium chloride, enough to stop a heart in under 2 minutes, mixed with trace amounts of insulin to mask the cause of death as diabetic shock." I closed my eyes, gripping the edge of the desk until my knuckles whitened. Michael hadn't just been planning Anna's death in the abstract, he had already made his attempt, and only the vigilance of a nurse had stood between him and murder. My pulse thundered in my ears as I realized just how close he had come. At 1:47 p.m., I found him in the hospital's parking garage on the 3rd level near the doctor's reserved spaces, walking briskly toward his BMW, medical bag swinging at his side. "Michael," I called out. He froze, turned slowly, his face pale and drawn. The arrogance from our office meeting was gone. "Edward," he said carefully, "what are you doing here? I thought security had your photo." I stepped closer. "They do, but you know what's interesting about security cameras? They record everything, including doctors wandering into the ICU at 2 in the morning with unmarked syringes." His hand trembled as he reached for his keys. They slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the concrete floor. I took another step, my voice steady. "Potassium chloride, Michael. Enough to kill Anna in minutes. And no medical order, no signature, no pharmacy record. His lips parted, but no words came out. His expensive suit was wrinkled, the Patek Philippe watch on his wrist glinting under the harsh garage lights, the same watch bought with my daughter's stolen money. "How's the yacht?" I asked. He flinched as if struck. "Beautiful photos, Michael. Champagne with Laura while Anna was in surgery. Very romantic." He swallowed hard. "You've been stalking us." I shook my head. "No, I've been protecting my daughter from her husband, who's been stealing her money to buy trinkets for his mistress. $420,000 in 4 months, all while she lay in a coma. That's not romance, Michael. That's theft." He tried to regain composure, but his face was chalk white. "You can't prove anything," he muttered. I pulled Dr. Kim's printed report from my jacket pocket and held it out. "October 10th. You withdrew $9,000 from Anna's trust fund at 2:46 p.m., while hospital records show you were in surgery. Unless you've learned to be in 2 places at once, that's computer fraud. A federal crime." He stared at the papers, his breath shallow. "What do you want?" He whispered. The same question as before, but this time stripped of confidence. "I want you to confess," I said. "Confess to the attempted murder, to the fraud, to every lie you've told, or face what's coming." His eyes darted around the garage, but there was no one to witness his collapse. I handed him back his keys and leaned closer so only he could hear. "By 3 o'clock this afternoon, the hospital board will have your entire file. Every forged document, every stolen dollar, every recorded phone call. And by tonight, Michael, the world will know exactly who you are." By the time the clock struck 3 that afternoon, the storm I had been building finally broke. The emergency medical board meeting was called by Dr. N. Patricia Hammond, Chief of Staff at Riverside General, a woman I had served alongside on the hospital's ethics committee years ago. She looked at me across the table with grim determination as Dr. Kim presented the forensic evidence, each spreadsheet projected on the screen behind her. Bank withdrawals perfectly aligned with jewelry purchases, yacht rentals, and Laura Bennett's luxury tastes. Each transaction was stamped with Michael's hospital login, linking him directly to the theft from Anna's trust fund. Patricia's face grew tighter with every slide. Then Tony's recordings were played. Michael's own voice filled the room, icy and calculated. "Don't worry about the old man. Anna will be gone soon, and then we'll have everything." The board members shifted uncomfortably, some glancing at me with open disgust at what they were hearing. The final blow came when Nurse Williams presented the lab report on the syringe, potassium chloride mixed with insulin, enough to kill instantly while disguising the cause. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Patricia spoke. "Effective immediately, Dr. Harris is suspended pending full investigation. Patient safety is our highest priority." She looked at me, her eyes softening for the briefest second. "Mr. Collins, thank you for bringing this forward. News travels fast inside hospitals, and by 6 that evening, Channel 9's health correspondent was standing outside Riverside General, cameras rolling. The headline blazed across the screen. "Prominent surgeon under investigation for attempted murder and insurance fraud." They showed Michael's hospital photo, smiling and confident, then cut to the Instagram posts of him and Laura on the yacht. The timestamp told its own story. Champagne glasses raised 37 minutes after Anna was rushed into emergency surgery. I watched the broadcast from Anna's room, her monitors steady, her chest rising in rhythm with the ventilator. My phone buzzed with reporters' calls, but I ignored them. Another buzz came minutes later, this time a text from an unknown number. "Edward, this is Laura Bennett. We need to talk." I showed the message to Tony, who had been sitting with me since the board meeting ended. He shook his head. "She's scared. She knows the FBI will come for her. She's trying to cut a deal." He advised patience. "Let's see what Michael does first." "On screen, Doctor." Hammond gave a statement, confirming that Riverside General had launched a formal ethics investigation and that federal authorities had been notified. When Michael's suspension was announced, the cameras cut to footage of him leaving the hospital, his face pale, his BMW parked crookedly across 2 spaces, as though even his ability to drive had abandoned him. The arrogance I once saw in his stride was gone, replaced by the stumble of a man cornered. At 7:20 p.m., my phone rang. Michael's voice came through, frantic. nothing like the controlled tone he had used days earlier. "You did this," he hissed. "You called the media, destroyed my career, my reputation." I kept my voice level, cold steel wrapped in calm. "I didn't call anyone, Michael. But when you try to murder your wife in a hospital, word tends to get out." He tried to defend himself, stammering. "That was medication, not poison." I cut him off. "Potassium chloride isn't medication. It's used in lethal injections. The nurses stopped you, Michael. If they hadn't, Anna would be dead." He went quiet, his breathing fast, shallow. "They're asking about the money," he whispered. "About Laura." I pressed harder. "Where is Laura?" "Last I checked, her landlord said she moved out yesterday, paid the lease termination in cash. $8,000. She's not answering your calls, is she?" Silence stretched long enough that I could almost hear his mind unraveling. "You're destroying my life," he muttered finally. I felt the weight of Anna's hand in mine, Sophie's laughter echoing in my memory. "No, Michael. You destroyed your own life the moment you decided my daughter was worth more dead than alive." The line went quiet, except for his shallow breaths. I ended the call and set the phone down, feeling a surge of clarity. The walls of Michael's carefully constructed facade were collapsing professionally, financially, and soon, legally. The man who had thought himself untouchable was about to learn that documentation and truth, once set in motion, were forces more relentless than any scalpel he had ever held. The courtroom was overflowing that morning. Reporters packed shoulder to shoulder in the gallery, hospital staff whispering in clusters, FBI agents stationed along the back wall with arms crossed and eyes sharp. It had been years since I'd seen this level of public interest, not since the notorious Bennett custody trial back in 2015. And now here I was, no longer presiding from the bench, but sitting at the petitioner's table fighting for the life of my granddaughter Sophie. Across the aisle sat Michael Harris in a dark, tailored suit that looked borrowed rather than owned. His once confident shoulders hunched forward. His attorney, Marcus Klein, fumbling through papers with the nervous energy of a man handed an impossible case. Beside me sat Janet Walsh, steady as ever, her voice calm but razor-sharp when she whispered strategy. Sophie, only 7 years old, with braids like her mother wore at that age, clung to my hand with quiet strength, her wide brown eyes scanning the sea of faces before landing on the judge. The gavel struck, and Judge Rebecca Martinez, sharp, fair, a woman I had once mentored when she was still a young prosecutor, called the session to order. "This is an emergency custody hearing in the matter of Harris versus Collins," she said. "The petitioner seeks temporary guardianship of minor child Sophie Harris." Klein was quick to stand. "Your Honor, Dr. Harris, is the child's natural father and primary custodian. Mr. Collins's petition is based on unsubstantiated allegations." Janet rose before the echo of his words had faded. "Objection, Your Honor. These allegations are substantiated by federal criminal charges already filed against Dr. Harris." Judge Martinez's eyes flicked to Klein. "Sustained. Please limit your arguments to custody matters, Mr. Klein." He adjusted his glasses, clearly rattled, before trying again. "Your Honor, Doctor. Harris is a respected surgeon with no prior criminal record. Mr. Collins is 60 years old and lacks the energy and capacity to raise a young child." Judge Martinez turned to me with the faintest of smiles. "Mr. Klein, are you familiar with Mr. Collins's professional record?" Klein hesitated. "Yes, Your Honor." She leaned forward. 30 years on the family court bench, never reversed on appeal. I think his qualifications speak for themselves. The tension in the room shifted. Janet seized the moment. "Your Honor, we would like to call our first witness, Nurse Maria Lopez." Maria walked to the stand, her uniform crisp, her 24-year service badge gleaming like a medal of honor. She swore the oath and sat, folding her hands neatly. Janet's questions came quick. "Nurse Lopez, did you witness Dr. Harris attempt to administer medication to Anna Harris without authorization?" Maria nodded firmly. "Yes. On October 20th at 2:05 a.m., he entered her ICU room with an unlabeled syringe. When I requested the medical order, he became hostile. The syringe was later tested and found to contain a lethal concentration of potassium chloride." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Janet pressed. "In your professional opinion, would this have killed Mrs. Harris?" "Without question," Maria answered. Klein's cross-examination faltered. Isn't it possible the syringe was routine medication mislabeled? Maria's eyes cut through him. No, potassium chloride in that dosage is not routine for brain injury patients. It would cause cardiac arrest in minutes. Klein sat down, defeated. Janet called the next witness, Tony Castellanos. He carried a stack of documents and a flash drive, his investigator's badge clipped to his belt. Mr. Castellanos, what did your investigation reveal? Janet asked. He projected records onto the courtroom screen. Bank statements, receipts, Instagram screenshots. Over $420,000 stolen from Anna Harris's accounts over 4 months. Used to purchase jewelry, luxury meals, and yacht rentals for Laura Bennett. Additionally, multiple recorded phone calls where Dr. Harris discussed insurance payouts contingent on his wife's death. The jury of public opinion in that gallery was already convinced. I could see it in their faces, horrified and angry. Next came Dr. Elaine Kim, her presence calm but commanding. Doctor? Kim, in your expert opinion, was this theft random? Janet asked. Not at all, she replied. It was highly systematic, Doctor. Harris created false identities, manipulated hospital logins, and forged medical documents. This required months of planning. What was his objective? Janet's voice rose. Doctor? Kim didn't hesitate. To profit from his wife's death. Specifically, to collect $3.1 million in life insurance, which doubled to $6.2 million under the policy's accidental death clause. The gallery erupted, reporters scribbling furiously, cameras clicking. Judge Martinez banged her gavel for order. Finally, Janet called Special Agent Maria Rodriguez from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Her badge gleamed as she testified. Doctor, Harris is under federal indictment for wire fraud, bank fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and insurance fraud. Potential sentence, life in prison. His accomplice, Laura Bennett, was arrested at Vancouver International Airport attempting to flee to Dubai. She is now cooperating with federal authorities. Janet asked the question that had been hanging like a shadow over the room. Agent Rodriguez, was Anna Harris's car accident truly an accident? No, Rodriguez said firmly. Forensic analysis confirmed the brake lines were deliberately severed using surgical instruments consistent with Dr. Harris's specialty. The gallery exploded into chaos, reporters nearly climbing over one another for quotes. Michael's face drained of all color, his hands trembling as he stared at the table in front of him. Klein whispered urgently in his ear, but Michael shook his head, refusing to testify. Judge Martinez's eyes swept the room before she spoke. I have heard enough. Emergency guardianship is granted to Edward Collins, effective immediately. Dr. Harris, your parental rights are suspended pending resolution of criminal charges. You will have no unsupervised contact with the minor child. The gavel struck, sharp and final. Sophie squeezed my hand and whispered, Grandpa, does this mean I get to stay with you? I looked down into her hopeful eyes and felt the weight of months of fear lift from my shoulders. Yes, sweetheart, I whispered back, for as long as you want. In that moment I knew that even before the criminal trial, even before prison bars closed around Michael Harris, justice had already begun. 3 months passed before the moment I had been praying for finally arrived. The doctors had warned us again and again that Anna's chances of recovery were slim, that the brain damage was too severe. But as I sat beside her in that quiet ICU room, the impossible happened. Her eyelids fluttered, then opened, her gaze meeting mine with fragile clarity. Dad, she whispered, her voice weak but steady. My heart surged, tears stinging my eyes. I'm here, sweetheart, you're safe. She tried to sit up, and I carefully supported her, avoiding the IV lines that still tethered her to machines. Her first question was the one I had dreaded. Where's Michael? I drew a breath, steadying myself. He's gone, Anna. He can't hurt you anymore. She closed her eyes briefly, then nodded as if the truth confirmed what she had already suspected deep down. I remember the car. The brake's not working. And Michael, he was angry about money. I squeezed her hand. You don't need to think about that now. Sophie is with me. She's safe, happy, and she's been visiting you every day. As if summoned by her name, the door swung open and Sophie ran in, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Mommy, you're awake! she cried, flinging herself onto the bed. Anna wrapped her arms around her daughter, both of them weeping tears of joy. "I missed you so much, baby," Anna said, kissing her forehead. Sophie grinned through tears. "Grandpa took good care of me. We made pancakes every Sunday, and I read to you every night." I stood back, watching the two of them together, feeling a peace I hadn't known in months. Justice had been served. Michael Harris had been convicted on all counts: insurance fraud, theft, medical negligence, conspiracy, and 2 attempts at murder. His sentence was 30 years to life, no possibility of parole. Laura Bennett received 10 years, her cooperation with the FBI buying her a lighter term, though her betrayal of Anna and Sophie would never be forgiven. The civil suit had recovered everything stolen, Anna's trust fund restored, the accounts replenished, punitive damages awarded that brought the total judgment to nearly $1.5 million. Michael's medical license was permanently revoked, his assets seized, his yacht sold at auction by the FBI to pay restitution. The arrogant man who once boasted of his Harvard training now faced the reality of a cell and a lifetime branded as a criminal. That evening, Dr. Mann with criminal Beerus 10. Patricia Hammond stopped by Anna's room during rounds. She smiled, her professional demeanor softening. "Anna, your recovery is remarkable. With physical therapy, I expect you'll make a near-full recovery. Neuroplasticity is working in your favor." Anna smiled faintly. "When can I go home?" "A few more weeks, but your prognosis is excellent," Dr. Hammond assured her. Later, when Sophie had fallen asleep curled in the chair beside the bed, Anna looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Dad, thank you for protecting us." I shook my head. "That's what fathers do." She tightened her grip on my hand, her strength returning. "I should have listened when you warned me about him." I brushed her hair gently back from her forehead. "You were in love. You wanted to believe the best. That's not a weakness, Anna, that's humanity. But you and Sophie will never have to live under his shadow again." Outside the window, the Bay Area sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold. The machines beeped steadily, life continuing, not ending. Sophie stirred in her sleep, mumbling about her spelling test the next day. I leaned back in my chair, feeling something I hadn't felt since the night of the accident. Hope. My family was whole again, scarred but unbroken, and stronger than ever. Some people mistake vulnerability for weakness, but they forget that the fiercest power in the world comes from protecting the ones you love. When a story like this comes to an end, it leaves us with more than just the memory of betrayal, justice, and survival. It leaves us with a powerful reminder. Family is fragile, yet it's also the strongest force we have. In the face of greed, lies, and even life or death struggles, what endures is the bond between a father, a daughter, and a granddaughter who refuse to be broken. Edward Collins wasn't just fighting a corrupt son-in-law, he was fighting for the very heartbeat of his family. And in the end, it wasn't wealth, titles, or prestige that triumphed. It was love, perseverance, and the truth. As we close this chapter, imagine yourself in Edward's place. What would you risk to protect the people you love most? Would you have the courage to expose lies, to challenge power, to stand against someone who thought themselves untouchable? These aren't just questions for the characters in this story, they're questions for all of us. Stories like this remind us why we come together here, sharing tales that inspire, provoke, and sometimes even shake us to our core. They aren't just entertainment, they're lessons about the cost of silence and the strength of standing tall. If this story moved you, if it made you think twice about what true loyalty and justice mean, then please support our journey in telling more stories like this. Before you head out, take a moment to hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and leave us a comment about where you're listening from. We'd love to know. And if you believe in the power of protecting family and uncovering the truth, consider sharing this video so more people can hear it. Together we can keep these powerful stories alive. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you in the next chapter.